Robin Zander, scene A1.
All right, Melissa, thanks so much for coming on Snafu.
Absolutely. So happy to be here.
This is a really fun throwback for me because, folks listening and watching may have heard me talk about background in the circus, but in many ways, movement, I've always said, has been my first language.
Yeah.
And it's for many years, long before Responsive Conference and Xander Media, my work today, was the thing that got me started curating on work and telling stories for startups, was my study of movement and behavior change applied to the workplace. So when I found you, and we've been connected for a while, but when we met this last year, I was like, here is somebody who's actually succeeded at something I was looking at for many years, which was getting people moving and building in movement into the workplace.
Yeah.
I'm really curious. Maybe we could just even start with your pitch, your description, because we all know that, sitting is the new smoking, right? But what is your pitch, particularly to corporate, to folks who are not like you and I are, athletes, movers, dancers, already bought in, as to why movement in the workplace matters?
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation each time we launch into it. And what I would tell you is most people have the lived experience of understanding that moving can solve problems for them, right? But sometimes you have to walk them all the way back to those personal experiences. So that's part of it. And I'll share what that pitch is. But the other piece of it is that, in the years that you and I have been thinking about this, studying this, the neuroscience underpinning it has just gotten so much richer. So those of us who had lived body-based experiences could have told you these things 20 years ago, but it's extremely helpful now to have them validated in very concrete scientific ways. And so our conversation as we approach the why of movement in the workday hits at a couple of different things. The first point is that just purely from a metabolic physical health level, there are enormously dangerous consequences of persistent sedentary behavior. They're bad for everybody. They're actually worse for women than for men. And so calling that out just as a hard, concrete cost does resonate with corporate, though I would tell you that they think more about the near-term health cost of musculoskeletal injuries and ergonomic consequences than the fact that sedentary behavior also leads to every chronic condition that we're suffering from around the world. So I care about both. I'm sure you do too, but fine, musculoskeletal cost savings. The piece that gets me particularly excited and the why behind Breakthru was not just about the physical health benefit of movement, it's about the cognitive benefit, right? And from there, the place where we usually start is to ask people with an open heart and open eyes, have you ever gotten stuck on a problem and gone for a walk and the problem got solved? And I have yet to ask that to a room full of anyone. Cybersecurity.
And they say no.
Multinational. And
right.
like literally everyone says yes, because it's lived human experience. So then when you're able to say, okay, there's a science to that. The fact is we are moving thinkers and learners. We think with our bodies, each other, and our places. And when you take the body out of the equation, you are limiting cognitive ability. And that's measurable. The two other pieces about Breakthru that have actually turned out to be way more resonant than I would have expected at the beginning of this journey are your body's a good way to reset your mood, and employees use their mood. How are they feeling emotionally as a natural resource during their day? So I can hand you a tool that's going to deliver a sentiment shift in employees in the space of 2 minutes. That call was crappy, you're feeling terrible, move for 2 minutes and suddenly
State
the weight of
change.
the world is not on your shoulders, then that has business value. And people really understand that. The very, very last piece is cognitive focus, right? So the fact that you can say to people, 2 minutes of movement is going to get you ready for higher cognitive performance, fewer errors, less fatigue for the next 2 hours. It's pretty obvious math. So I think your intuition about it, Robin, is right, that there's hurdles because Americans are just dumbly trained to believe we're supposed to
We
Sit
sit
still
in
to think.
chairs and listen to the person talk to us.
I mean,
That's how I learn.
and it's so absurd because honestly, back to the common sense side of it, that isn't how anybody learns. And we all know that. There's just
Right.
something super serious that was taught to us all about sit still to think hard when we're little. But the real offender here, if we want to be honest about it, is technology in the workplace. We sit still because our computers don't walk with us. And so we've been trained to chain up to this thing and just go. And yeah, not great outcomes for any of us.
Yeah. I'm reminded of the Steve Jobs anecdote of, he would just be seen walking, taking long business meetings, walking. Uh, and I feel like that's just like an easy sales pitch too. You know how Steve Jobs had his breakthroughs in walking meetings, right? We get people moving. Why 2 minutes?
A lot of that, I mean, there's science behind that. So in the space of 2 minutes, you can help someone reset their metabolism. So our first goal was that how long does it take to shift the metabolic, right? It's the same thing when someone looks at you and says 5 deep breaths are actually going to make a metabolic physiological difference. That's the truth. So that was a piece of it. But I think my bigger why of that, leaving aside the fact that I was just born impatient. So I love things that are
Click, click.
yeah, but I think the world is full of things that look complicated, long, hard, and like the first step is too big to take. And the why behind Breakthru, like my deeper why, was how do you make a tool that helps someone understand that positive change can happen quickly? And yes, it's just a first step, but it is true that in the space of 2 minutes, you can feel better. And so can we? And then if we can make it that short and that fast, how do we draw in all the people who, for all the right reasons, are trying to just keep going and believe they don't have space in their day? The nurses, the working parents, the type A leaders, the people at nonprofits putting others first. I mean, there's a universe of humans who need breaks who aren't taking them because literally, and these are words of them, not me, they feel guilty. They feel guilty taking breaks. So then how do you
Yep.
make something that is hard to say no to?
I'm going to zoom in and out of nerdum around movement and habits and dance
Wait, I want to
to,
one more
yeah,
thing to you,
please.
which is another thing about 2 minutes. And you know this as an athlete, as a mover, as someone who's used your body to think your whole life. Your perception of time changes when you are in a fully embodied moment. So I've had the joy of interviewing adventure athletes, elite athletes, also, people with really impaired mobility, all along that spectrum. And they will all say to you that when you have a moment of just centering in, focusing on one thing, your movement, your breath, time expands. And suddenly it does not seem like that next email is going to kill you, right? There's this a little bit more space in the day. And so I think that's one of the big gifts embodied experiences can give us. And it's a sad thing if people don't learn that growing up.
Yeah. I think one of the things that's intriguing to me about you and your work is you are not the stereotype of a venture-backed startup founder. And we could spend easily many hours just talking about habit formation and movement practices that change lives. I want to talk about your work with Mark Morris, David Leventhal, who runs Dance for PD out of the Mark Morris Studios, as a friend. We have a lot of people in movement lands in common, but
Yeah.
you've also raised money. You are working with globally recognized brands. So maybe just to start off for listeners and viewers, like give us some of your credentials as to like how much you've raised, if that's public, who clients that you're working for that you can share, and how it actually works, like some of the successes you've seen through with Breakthru so far.
Yeah, I will say we got here first, not because of venture. I'm grateful to the people at our cap table, but if venture capital were in charge, I'm sure I would not exist. So
Yeah.
just get that, out of the gate and put it on the table. We are in people's blind spots. Thank goodness. That's why many other people are not doing what we're doing. That said, we got here out of years of research, design development, prototyping with two different kinds of entities, movement-based focused entities, the many different kinds of things, labs, et cetera, but also the Nikes and the Lululemons of the world, us doing really deep research about movement, but, non-expert movers, et cetera, and working with dance companies, working with movers. And then the flip side of it was at the same time, we were designing and developing on emergent technologies. So I'm a creative technologist, I'm an inventor, and my background was working with things like spatial sound, immersive, VR, augmented reality, et cetera. Not because I love tech, because I don't, but because those forms of technology allowed us to experiment with full-bodied immersion and engagement and interactivity. So our early backers were the Microsofts and Unities of the world, places that cared about emergent technology and real-time interaction, and movement companies. Our pivot was that at the beginning of COVID, we were asked by Microsoft to come onto Microsoft Teams and as an intervention, because so much of the world was getting stuck at home and stuck inside these platforms. And also, I mean, obviously the people who were not, the people who are on the front line of healthcare, et cetera, and just enormous unparalleled stress, right? So we launched on Teams. The truth is, my team and I had never built a traditional app. We'd only made things that were weird and were spatial and were interactive. And once we launched it, I mean, now we're in 150 countries, but within not very long, we were in 72. And the range of people touching it were preschools in Poland all the way to the SAPs of the world. We were like, wow, okay, this is happening because around the world, people are feeling overwhelmed and they're looking for a solution. They want these breaks. And so for us, the easy part, to be honest, has been engaging with what has become our array of customers. And we have some very powerful corporate brands and healthcare organizations on our platform. And we also continue to have enormous organic use in all different other kinds of organizations and globally. So that's one thing. On the venture capital front, we have raised, we're technically a seed company. We have amazing funds who've backed us, like Mucker, like Graham and Walker, like Full Circle. You and I know Virginie in common. And we've raised 2.1 million, but we're 5 years old. So a lot of us has been bootstrapped, and I have a team of 20 people. So if you do the math there, obviously it wasn't the 2.1 million that's gotten us here. We're also over 1 million in revenue in terms of ARR. So I would characterize us as a bootstrapped company that's had some help along the way from funds who actually care about the impact of what they're funding.
What is the experience, maybe if you'll choose a specific client, Microsoft or somebody else, that people have using the platform?
You mean in terms of the end user experience, how they're using it in their day?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
So people are touching it at this point in time on a couple of different platforms, but the primary intervention for most people around the world is their main work tools. So that could be Slack, that could be Chrome, that could be Microsoft Teams. In the context of that, they're personalizing reminders for themselves to take breaks, breathing breaks, movement-based breaks. It's staying in the context of the sort of tools that they're in persistently, so it's out of hand's reach. But when they're delivered a prompt, it's not just your Apple Watch telling you to stand up. You're handed the opportunity to choose, how do you want to feel in 2 minutes? And then the experience that you're getting is still multimodal and immersive. So it's spatial sound, it's a guided movement designed by someone who's, a really smart mover, like the Mark Morrises of the world, and designed to take you physiologically and emotionally to the state that you've just chosen. And we, brought every design principle we had from spatial computing to the best of our ability into a platform that doesn't really fully accommodate it. But when you use Breakthru on your computer, your movement is changing the sound, it's changing the visuals. And so we always have this philosophy that the person using the tool is the last maker, right? Like what's happening there, it's not about consumption of media, it's about them doing something that changes. It's an experience. But I would say another thing about Breakthru, and for what that looks like in someone's day, people touch it for so many different reasons. I mean, I was speaking with someone just this morning who is touching it because she's on a weight loss journey and she started at 500 pounds and she couldn't get out and take a walk at the end of the day. And now this has given her in her words, more flexibility, more mobility, more confidence in her body. And she is losing weight, and now she's moving more, but it was a big step forward to just get out of that I'm trapped in my chair all day long. I have other people who purely are using it so their neck doesn't hurt at the end of the day. And then I get, engineers who are using it like life hackers hourly, and they tell me they're doing it so the code doesn't swim on their screen. So I think everyone's kind of there's also the workers who are like, I'm doing this, my feelings just got hurt by that email or that phone call, or I'm not feeling brave enough for the next presentation. So people find all different avenues in. But I think really the success comes from it being right there when you need it, and fast.
Yeah. I think I transitioned from a practitioner, a student of movement, to studying it from a behavior change lens. When I had my first call with BJ Fogg, I think it was 2012 or 2013. So at the time I was working full time in private practice with kids with autism all over the world. I'd been doing that for a handful of years. And I was also dancing ballet 40 hours a week as a 20 something alongside 12-year-olds in tutus, all of the classic dance movies of that guy who came to ballet late. And the dichotomy of that, not lost on me still, was pretty agonizing at the time, right? I knew nobody who did either one of these things who looked anything like me.
Yeah.
And BJ heard about the mix that I was doing of helping families with special needs kids and training dance myself. For the clarity, I was doing behavior change with special needs kids, not anything dance related.
Yeah.
And he said, "Oh, I'm running Design for Dance, this conference that my lab just started, because we looked at Zumba, which has millions of active users, practitioners, dancers around the world every week. And Zumba serves as a gateway for people to get more fit, to join gyms, to begin practicing other forms of fitness. And so we're looking at how do we get people dancing, because dancing can become a form of greater and greater levels of activity. It doesn't have a lot of the impediments. A lot of the walking into a CrossFit gym when you're overweight is not easy to do. Walking into Zumba, slightly easier. From that, I got to know, we mentioned Mark Morris, David Leventhal, who danced with Mark Morris, right? Runs Dance for PD, Dance for Parkinson's. Sort of this whole Sydney Skybetter at Brown, who studies choreographic interfaces. Both of whom have been on this podcast years and years ago. These folks in all different sort of ecosystems and divergent worlds that are looking at the intersection of human behavior, movement, and technology, right? But in those years, in 2012, 2013, we were looking for solutions like yours of getting people moving. So one year, I was given ownership of the Design for Dance conference. After that year of working with BJ in his lab, I ran it. We looked at dance in the workplace. One of the themes of one of the years that I ran that conference was dance at work. And there were a lot more consultants wanting to encourage people dancing in the workplace than there were organizations who were going to embrace this idea of get up out of your chair while wearing your, suit or jeans and hoodie and move. Because, as you say, we're trained from, childhood that learning happens while sitting and increasingly in front of a computer.
Yeah.
I think, go ahead.
Well, no, I mean, there's so much there to unpack, and everyone that you just mentioned is, so many of those people have been really meaningful along my journey at various points. I think the point that you're making about the extraordinary body-based intelligence that resides in the community, a diverse community of movers around the world. I mean, one of the things Breakthru has always sort of sought to do is to be a bridge between that kind of wisdom and these places that don't normally have access to it. But in order to make that bridge, we thought a lot about, how can we be a Trojan horse? How can we be this small thing that can just find its way into the system, be a little bit disruptive? At the same time, we thought a lot, because we were doing lots of mapping of people's lifetime movement journeys. What did movement do for you at 5 versus 25 versus, in my case, much older than that? And you start to see patterns. And one of the huge patterns you see is that at childhood, for most people, free play movement is joy. Movement is a sense of freedom. Movement is a sense of expression. Those are not the same things you find in competitive sports. You find a bunch of richness in competitive sports, but it's not what you find in creative or free movement at all. Two separate, or what I would contextualize as outdoor movement, right? Which can evolve into adventure sports. Then, if you're that kind of mover and you hit high school, you hit grammar school, you hit America, which we've turned into Sparta, and you're not, the soccer player, the basketball player, or whatever the hell you're supposed to be. I mean, I was taking folk dance. Thank goodness it was, not this era. And people fall off. They decide, I'm actually not a mover. I'm a thinker, or I am a watcher, or whatever I am. But the truth, and they break, or they are that elite athlete, and then they're injured at some point. A terrible
Yep.
injury. It happens to literally everyone. And then they have to figure out how to
Broke a
mentally.
neck at 19, right?
I
Like
know
I
what you.
walked into a gymnastics gym at 17. I broke my neck. I guess maybe I was 20. So
I
in
mean,
many ways, I actually am fortunate that that happened so soon, because had that happened at 35 instead, I might never have come back from it.
the journey, it's interesting. I was at a conference on female athletic performance 2 days ago at Stanford. And of course, the most interesting panel was around mindset. And two of the people speaking on it were, a para-Olympian who had also then on top of that come back from a very hard injury, and a track athlete having come back from a very hard injury. Because you realize it's in those moments of challenge that we like actually learn about our body. Anyway,
Yep.
so we're looking at all of this and we're going, hey, well, but the truth is you stopped at 20. You need to keep moving till you're 80 if you want to hit 80, right? And so then what do we do to invite you in? Because it's not going to be CrossFit. But truthfully, it's not going to be, some gorgeous woman in Lululemon pants either. It's like so much of what we've designed that's theoretically well-being or fitness is so exclusionary and so
Yep.
short-sighted, and also not about how you feel. It's about how you look. And you and I both know that that doesn't drive intrinsic motivation. That is a short-lived journey.
Yep.
So Breakthru really came out of thinking about those kinds of problems. And then, okay, if that's the problem set, what do you do to trick people into it?
Probably half or more than half of our audience are entrepreneurs, not necessarily venture backed, right? Small business owners, consultants, people building a practice, freelancing. What's it been like building this company, right? And you have raised venture, but you have much more in annual recurring revenue than
Yeah.
you're not following a traditional venture path, which, right, as somebody who's built a bunch of small businesses and exited a couple of them, I respect that even more than raising money. Raising money is the easy part. Building a business is the hard part. You
Yeah.
have real revenue. Like what is it like building? Certainly back in 2013, when I was, building in this space, talking about this every day with people, it was a hard sell. What's going well, and what are the challenging things about building business in this space today?
Um, I think we've talked a bunch about many of the things that are going well, right? Like we have significant end user love, we have traction, we have all of these things. For us, the breakthrough in terms of being able to go sell was learning to carry forward the voices of people's own employees to their employers. And to just say, look, these are the words we are hearing from your employee base after a 2-minute engagement. And okay, it's your choice if you think that's worth the cost of a cup of coffee. If you don't, okay, and so that power of being able to carry those voices forward has been why it's worked. Where it gets stuck, and this is again back to that idea of like a well-being industry, and I think that that's my biggest barrier when we've hit a barrier with venture. I mean, I'll say it with humor because it is humorous if you think about it. But if I could tell you the number of partner meetings that I got to where someone goes, oh, I liked this, but then my wife said she wouldn't use it. I'm like, yeah, well, she's on her 5th manicure for the day while already having gone to 4 private Pilates classes. And when she's done with her $22 smoothie, I don't think like there's space in her life for what I'm delivering. And that is the truth. And we've literally hit that wall with so many people. And I think the point being that venture funds well-being products that look like they're for the wealthy. and that is not, or that are a lifestyle play, and well-being for longevity, and well-being for the one guy who's going to buy the $50,000 bed. I mean, I just don't even understand the industry. It just makes me appalled. I don't think well-being should be an industry. Well-being is a human right, and movement is a human right. We all deserve these things in our everyday. And the workers that I talk to are doing really hard work, hard jobs, not the average thing that you see, in the coastal elite. And these things make a difference, that it's accessible, that it's there for them. Where did you even start the question? So I would say that,
Well, I just have a quick
yeah,
sort of
yeah,
interjection about venture. I would argue that the best people in venture, and I'm not a venture capitalist, I don't play one on the internet, this is not financial advice, but I'm thinking about, for example, my friend Jeremy Liu, who was an early partner at Lightspeed Ventures.
yeah,
He's probably best known for, I know him because he's a closet acrobat. We train athletics together regularly, right? I didn't know that he was a venture capitalist until we started training handstands together. So fun full circle moment. But he's probably best known for investing in Snapchat. He's been on
yeah,
the podcast. He discovered Snapchat because his daughter was using Snapchat,
yeah, yeah,
right? And he was like, "Wait, what's that app that you're using?" He tells this on the pod. He's told this many times, many different platforms. People can Google it. But he says that to be a good investor, and I think to see trends in any domain means stepping outside of your hubris, that you will recognize, the next great thing, and instead look at what people are doing on the edges that could become mainstream, right? So
yeah,
Wim Hof, right? And then James Nestor wrote Breath.
yeah,
And now breath work, right? It comes and goes. You and I've seen several waves of people embracing tumo breathing and various sort of styles of intentional breath work, box breathing, right? All of these different practices. But you stay in the trenches long enough of something that, clearly you believe in and I believe in, of getting people moving, and it will come back again in a different guise,
of
right?
course.
Jeremy saw Snapchat because his daughter was using it, not because he saw an investment opportunity.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a really good point. The lack of hubris is also a really good point. Yeah. So, but I think the other thing that for us has made a difference, just in terms of formulating the company and holding it together, is that people want to work in organizations where they're mission aligned. And we've been really lucky to forge a team of people who care about what we're doing, but who also have other artistic practices, be they movement based or whatever, where they're able to express those in the context of the product that we're making. And so I think that that has been a superpower. That, and the fact that I'm always happy to hire moms. A lot of moms, yeah, who've had their day with the more traditional workplace environments.
Yeah. What is your path as a mover, as a dancer, as somebody who has been studying movement as a practitioner for a long time?
For me, when I was little, it was always creative movement. So that was various forms of dance. I always loved folk dance. And I still love, and that's actually something we haven't talked about with Breakthru, but I think we intuitively know it about movement. I mean, it's a community forming tool, right? And moving in sync with others is incredibly empowering. And a lot of the kinds of movement that I loved when I was little were like that. I also love to swim. So I've always loved to move in the outdoors. I continued to study dance really seriously all the way through. I mean, I was taking ground technique 6 days a week all the way through college, not because I was ever going to be a great dancer. And I think I knew that out of the gate. It was not, I mean, I had 2 years in a high school dance company, but it was really always about the body-based learning. And at the same time, I was doing a lot of theater, which was really similar. I mean, full-bodied, experiential connection with others, et cetera, et cetera. And I continue to be super committed to having a movement practice outdoors, hiking, now yoga, which has been in my life for, over 20 years. But at the same time, I never lost my adoration and love of expert movers. And I'm married to someone who played pro basketball. I managed a dance company as like a side gig for many, many, many years. I spend a lot of time around athletes and movers and learn so much from them. And so I've always been the non-expert, but I have a huge amount of adoration for people for whom that's their primary language.
It's fun. I looked at folk dance. So I started dancing at 19. I really fell into the ballet rabbit hole at about 20, 21. I came to social dance, which I still do today,
Yes.
uh, Argentine tango, among others,
Wow.
a little bit later than that. And so I looked at, I mean, I remember as I was starting ballet being like, oh, but I don't do that thing over there, which is partner dance or social dance. So I think of folk dance, and I remember a lot of friends in undergrad and college were partner dancers, social dancers, and looking at me doing ballet, being like, "Oh, I could never do that." And
Yeah.
I looked at it from the other side.
Yeah.
Um, it's
Well,
maybe
wait,
a
I have
fun.
one other thing to say about that. I mean, I was lucky that when I was young, you still went out dancing. Like that's what you did on the weekends, right?
Hmm.
To live music. And I also went to school, college and grad school in New York during a resurgence of incredible, tiny bar bands that then went arena rock bands, and spent many nights dancing until the sun came up. And that's always been a way of, yes, it's letting off steam, but it's also just, uh, I don't know. I mean, I feel like there's so little of that kind of movement available to youth today in the United States, the way that I see it. And to me, it's such a tragedy. I mean, much of what I learned about being human and interactivity came out of those arenas and those encounters. And I just don't know. I don't know how you go through adolescence without being able to go out dancing. I mean,
So
honestly.
fun because I started dancing post adolescence, right? I started dancing at 21, 22. So I have the other side of it where like
But you
uh
were moving. I mean, you were moving a lot as a form of expression, right?
no, not as expression. I started
Mm.
moving as a form of expression when I walked into a gymnastics gym at 19 or 18.
Yeah.
I was a competitive runner. I grew up in a
Oh, I
family where
didn't
you
know
had to
that
have a
about
physical
you.
practice. So
Interesting.
from 8 years old to 18, my identity was distance runner,
I
right? And
had no
like at
idea. How is
nine or
that not
10,
before? So I want to hear it. So see, your movement journey is amazing. That is so hardcore. I love track.
yeah.
Really, though, as long
I do now. I run, 5 kilometers or more every day, just as like a basic, like as a warm up for my physical practice. Um, all right. So in brief, because probably folks, unless they've gone deep down my content over the years, don't know it either. Um, I grew up in a family that had a physical practice. That was just like my sister, I remember, played tennis for several years. My dad was a runner and would run 8 miles every single morning before I got out of bed. My mom had what we called growing up an aerobics class. Turns out it was with a semi world famous jazz dance choreographer who had the same
wow.
group of like 40 ladies who took class with Susan 3 days a week. So that
Interesting.
after my first year of studying dance 40 hours a week in college, I came back and took the aerobics class and got my ass handed to me by these little old ladies in their 50s who were dancing with the same choreographer for decades. But my identity was 100%. I was a runner. Not even out of love, but in some ways out of obligation from 8 to 18. Tried to
Amazing.
keep up with my dad's marathon when I was, I think, like 10 and
Wow.
ended up crying after like 200 meters.
Yes.
And burnt out at 17, walked off the cross country team as a varsity. Like, I was fast. I think
Yeah.
my fastest ever 3 mile race was 15 minutes.
Wow.
Uh, and walked home, kind of told my mom as I walked into the kitchen, I quit the team. And because we had to have a physical practice, pulled open a phone book and cold called gymnastics gyms. And
Oh,
the first
interesting.
five were like, "Are you pre-Olympian? Are you calling for a kid sibling?" Like, no, this was, 2002, something in that range. We don't have classes for adults with no experience. Go away and stop bothering us.
Oh,
And credit where due, in Petaluma, California, Redwood Empire Gymnastics said, yes, we have adult class twice a week, 7 to 9 p.m., Tuesdays and Thursdays, come on down. That same day, I walked into that class and that warehouse, right? If you've ever been in a gymnastics gym, you'll never forget it. If you never have, you should. They're giant warehouses.
yeah.
They smell like chalk dust. And there's these apparatuses that you only ever see on the Olympics. And I learned to do a backflip. I went up on a high bar. Maybe 10 years later, training gymnastics at Stanford, I learned to do a giant on a high bar, right? And my life changed. I realized that people like me could go do things like that.
Mm.
Saw
And
Cirque du Soleil a couple months later for the first time. Went to college, but with an eye for the École Nationale de Cirque, Cirque du Soleil's training grounds. That's the dog Riley in the background shaking out. We can talk about shaking and the utility of that. That's a whole fun one that I've been talking to my fiance about. Um, and started fencing, started rock climbing, started, all sorts of things. Broke my ankle maybe pretty shortly thereafter rock climbing.
mm,
So that was like an early injury that then informed much of what I did after. Went through college studying research psychology, cognitive
mhm.
and behavioral psych, but I was doing trapeze 3 days a week. I was doing ballet 3 days a week. I was doing
Yeah,
capoeira twice a week. I was doing hip hop. I went and studied every single form of movement and expressive movement and choreographic movement that I could get my hands on.
yeah.
Then in my last year of college, I was working on double back tucks on a trampoline and landed on my neck and dislocated C7, so a partial
Mhm.
dislocation of the spine, broken neck, which people hear and say, oh, tragic. And I'm like, no, best thing that ever happened to me. Because what it did is it introduced me to a world of somatic rehabilitation.
Yeah,
I ended up meeting a woman named Anat Banyel, who was a disciple of Moshe Feldenkrais.
yeah.
Studied with her for 8 years. That then led to me working with kids with special needs. After about 2 years of my work with her, I was no longer in pain, right? I am in better shape now at 39 than I ever was at 21.
Yeah.
Um, and have, even to this day, an extraordinarily diverse physical practice, everything from cold plunging to, I'm still working on a 1 arm 60-second handstand, right? 60 seconds, 1 arm. Um, and run and swim and do both, like what I think of as hard movement, right? Running or acrobatics, and soft movement, which is much more embodied exploration and wind down stuff.
But wait, I want to back all the way up to something that you said, because to me, this is at the crux of it. You were talking about how that start with gymnastics and doing in yoga, we joke about it as the handstand moment, but like a moment where you do something that you were not sure you could ever do, right? And then you've embodied it once. And then what that changes in your psyche about the potential of yourself and other. I mean, look at that
Yep.
incredibly rich list of movement. And in that time that we spent interviewing people about their lifetime movement journey, if they had an unlock moment like that, they discovered a universe. There was many
Yep.
different kinds of movement, or they just got shut down, right? About
Yep.
something like pain management. And it's a fascinating thing, but I mean, the body is an endless journey of discovery if you don't divorce yourself from the opportunity. But so many people are just cut off, and it's not their fault. I mean, we've designed
No, it's the world we have designed ourselves into.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Interesting that moment, because I'm asking myself, was there a specific physical move or the
mhm.
handstand moment in yoga where you realize you can go upside down for the first time and not just do, warrior two? I don't know if I have a single moment, because for me it was literally walking of a movement. It was
Yeah,
walking into the gymnastics gym and seeing people doing stuff that I'd only ever dreamed of,
yeah, yeah,
and having the question, can I go do that? And
yeah,
someone saying yes.
yeah. Well, that's
And
something.
like that
Yeah.
moment has defined me ever since.
I mean, this is another thing that's very deeply interesting to me about athletics and how we hold it in our current society. That moment that you were just describing, I mean, when you're seeing those movements, your mirror neurons are firing and your imagination is engaged. And, if you understand a sport at all, if you're a surfer and you watch a surf film, your imagination is surfing those waves. One of the athletes that I was talking about on that mindset who'd gone through an injury, she went to worlds having not been able to train for almost a year, but she chair
Mental
flew
rehearsal.
pilots do. Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
she outperformed
Ah.
she'd ever performed.
Yep.
I mean, it's so fascinating, right? And so like that side of it's just deeply deeply interesting to me, and I've always believed that the highlights should not be the thing that get us sitting on the couch. Like that should be the inspiration to try to take one step in your own body towards that potential.
So, just because I got shivers as you described that, and I think mental rehearsal is just so fascinating, I'm going to ask you a question I wasn't planning on, which is, what are your favorite books? And if you want to go broader media, that's fine too, about movement. So I'm thinking of like Josh Waitzkin's The Art of Learning,
Yeah.
right? Which is about learning, but it's his journey from chess into Tai Chi push hands, and then from there went into Brazilian Jiu Jitsu afterwards, and now is a big wave surfer on foil. um a Sense of Where You Are by John McPhee is
Yeah.
just such a
Amazing.
beautiful, about Bill Bradley playing basketball at Princeton, just
Yeah.
like such an exquisite book
One of
about
the best.
basketball.
Agreed.
What are your favorite books about that are Quake books, as Tyler Cowen would say, these books that can change lives about movement?
I mean, I am an admirer of Annie Murphy Paul's The Extended Mind, for the fact that it brings together so much current day thinking around how we think with our bodies, with each other, with our places. It's a compendium. It's not the research itself, but it's very concrete and well written, and a book that I would absolutely recommend. I absolutely would have said the McPhee book as well. I adore him as a writer, period. I think for me with movement, I read a lot of scientific articles. I mean, I'm way down deep in, these weird studies where no one's putting the pieces together between this one versus that one versus this one. So we're looking at a lot of foundational research. Um, but I learn through listening. And so a lot of the learning I've done about movement has been in conversation with movers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
um I want to be respectful of your time. We have maybe just 5 minutes left. um I, having worked with BJ for several years and continue to just be a big fan and advocate of BJ Fogg's work,
Yeah.
one of the questions I have is for folks who hear my story and say, "Oh, that must be nice for you. You had this life-changing moment at 19 with gymnastics and have been a mover ever since." I have my own answers to that, which I can share. But what do you tell people of like, this is how to get started in a physical practice at any age?
Well, I
Twyla
think,
Tharp
yeah.
got called out at Responsive Conference this year by one of our main stage speakers, who, to this day takes a taxi from her apartment in Manhattan to like a bodybuilder's gym where she works with her personal trainer for 2 hours from like 5 to 7 a.m. every single morning before then going to the dance studio, the Twyla Tharp, the
Yeah.
famous modern
Yeah.
American choreographer. I think that, like, how do you help people just get started, take the tiny step to do something that they might want to do but don't know where to begin?
I would say it's exactly what you just described. It's the tiny step, right? And I mean, again, that's very foundational to Breakthru's vision of why just 2 minutes, and helping people understand that these short embodied moments can make a difference. I hear again and again and again with people that if they make more space for small movement in the flow of their day, the next thing they know, they're taking a walk, they're swimming again, etc. We have a lot of myths in our culture about, you have to perform at an Olympic level to be in a sport, or there's no way you could pick this up at 50, or you're too far gone, or forget about it. And yet it's just not the truth. I mean, it's the most astounding thing about the human body, how resilient and adaptable and plastic it is. And I think the science will tell you that there's change that you can see within a week, within a day. There's change you can feel in the space of 2 minutes. So it is truly just that thing of the small first step, but taking a small first step towards something that you're actually interested in. I mean, that's what's fascinating. Like, there's such a diversity of movements. And again, back to Zumba, I think that's why it was an invitation to so many people who are just like, I hate going to the gym. I would never go to a gym. You could put a gun to my head and I would not go to a gym. I want to be outdoors. I want to be in the water. I want to be with my husband. I want to be on a bike. Want to dance. I'm just not. And a lot of time you get these people who have these clock watching experiences of, oh, this is what I need to do to get strong. And there's about a zillion other choices. If it's not something that intrigues you, you don't feel like you're still learning. If you don't find joy in it, you're not going to do it. And it shouldn't feel like work in that way, right?
Me at 22 would be amazed and a little bit appalled because I'm absolutely a gym rat. I have a home gym.
I
I have often had a gym membership, right? People who know me today know that I go to the gym for like hours at a time.
yeah.
And at 22, I was adamantly like, I did not ever want to go to a gym. It was actually 2 dates. I took her social dancing on the first date, and she took me to the gym and taught me how to lift on the second date at my early 20s, mid 20s. That started to change that. But like that idea of it can change over time, right?
Absolutely.
Um, and
Absolutely.
something you said, the way I phrase it is pull on the thread that interests you. Is like
Exactly.
whatever it is that you're interested in physically, go do a tiny, tiny, tiny version of that because the world can just go so, the rabbit holes of movement are so profound and so deep.
Could not agree more. And I think the other piece is the science backs up that those small moments have a big impact. So yeah, I'm with you.
Yep. So folks can go to
Mm,
breakthru.me
yep,
to learn more.
please.
If they want a taste of what it is that these 2 minute micro breaks that you and that Breakthru provide to teams, what's the best place to go to try out a couple of these or to try out the platform to kick the tires independent of their employer bringing this into
Yeah,
their
for
their
sure.
organization?
You can find that on our website, but I'll also send you a link after this call. That's just a way to step right into a web-based experience and gives people a good taste.
Perfect. And those will be in the show notes. Melissa, any parting advice for folks listening and watching from this conversation or more broadly?
Uh, keep learning, do what you love, and the answers reveal themselves. I don't know. This you're going to have to edit out. I have no parting words. I mean, I think stubbornness and working with people you care about and working on something that's meaningful are the things that make it possible to stick with the hard stuff, right?
Awesome. Well, thank you so
Yeah.
much for coming on today. It's a pleasure to sit down. I've been looking forward to this for a while.
Likewise. Thank you so much for the great conversation.